Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Abby and I'm going to be your host for this morning. We do also have Matt on hand today to answer any questions along the way. Today we're going to be looking at the company archive within your Sage 50 Accounts software. Now this webinar is a little bit shorter than the usual webinar, so it's going to take around 30 minutes, give or take, depending on how many questions we have outstanding at the end. Before we begin, just for those who are regular to our webinars, just to make you aware, so you are going to be placed on mute automatically when you join. If you want to ask any questions, you can use the questions panel down the right hand side, and that's just by clicking on the icon that looks like a little speech bubble with the question mark in the middle. You open up that panel and you can send your questions across to me and Matt to answer your questions today. We do also have a handout for today. You can download this by clicking on the button that looks like a little document that with the folded corner, and I would recommend downloading this as it does have some clickable buttons to our help centre. And just make you aware as well, this handout will not be available after the session has ended, which is why we always recommend to download these before the session has come to an end. Okay, so this is what we're going to be covering on today's session. So we're going to be looking at what is an archive, company archive. So we've created this topic based on the amount of questions we've gotten on other sessions. So the company archive is one step of a bigger process if you are looking to clear out your data. So we want to clear out up what an archive actually is and how it works and what are the benefits. We also have some frequently asked questions from other sessions. There will also be some demonstration on how to take an archive and how to access it. What are the differences between an archive, a backup, and the clear audit trail process? And then towards the end, I will summarise my session. Now, before we move on, I just want to launch a poll on your screen there. And I'm just wanting to know, what is your understanding of the company archive? So does it remove all data? Does it take a read-only copy of your data? Or does it back up your data? Now, like I say, this is not you're not going to be penalised if you don't get this answer right. It's just to test your knowledge to see where people are at and what their understanding of the company archive already is. So if you can just pop your votes in, I can see they're starting to come through now. So you can pop your vote in for me. If you're not sure, just take a guess. What we usually do is we wait until we get around 70%, and then we'll close that poll. And then what I can do is I can share the results with you as well. Okay, so we've got all the votes in now. So what we'll do is we'll close that poll down. Don't worry if you haven't voted. Okay, so 38% of you thinks it removes all data. 63% of you think it takes a read-only copy of your data. And no one voted for backing up your data. So the correct answer is the second one. So it takes a read-only copy of your data. But like I say, we're going to go into more detail around that in this session. Okay, so I'll close that down. Okay, let's get stuck in with the topic. So what is an archive? So an archive takes a read-only copy of your data as it appears in the program at the time, including any logon details. The best way to describe it is it's taking like a photograph, snapshot, screenshot of your data, but it allows you to browse through it like a normal company. Now, you can't pick specific areas it archives, you can't pick dates, it just takes a snapshot of your whole company as it is at that point in time. You cannot, oops, bear with me, there we go. Accidentally scroll through the slides there. So you cannot add anything new. And the only elements that you can edit or remove is records, so like your customer supplier records for GDPR purposes. And it allows you to revisit historical data, view figures, run reports. But please note, anything you change in the archive does not update in the live data and vice versa. So anything you change in the live data will not update in the archived company. You must have the right user permissions to create an archive and access it. If you log in as manager, you will automatically have access. But if you do log in as any other user and you do not see the option for archive, then you will need to have your level of access reviewed using the manager logon details. It does not remove any information from the program. So that is often a misconception. When you create an archive, it does not remove any information. It doesn't post anything. It literally takes a picture of your data and then it puts it in a separate place so then you can access it at a later date. So it creates a file that is then saved within the company folder of your data path, which then can be opened like a separate company to your live data. One thing to be wary of is that attachments are not included in this. So if that is the case, we would recommend that you do take a backup to include attachments so you do have access to historical attachments. And lastly, you need to have access to the software to be able to view an archive file. So if you were to leave Sage, you wouldn't, and you had archives, you wouldn't be able to access those company archives because you would need an access to the software with a valid license to be able to access that information. Also, another thing to be made aware of, archive files do not sync over remote data access. But what you can do, if you do use remote data access, is you can take an archive-only backup, which you can then share with your colleagues. So you might be wondering, well, when might I take an archive? So you can take an archive at any point in time, and there's no limit on how many times you can take one. But we strongly recommend to take one prior to running your end process, and any time you run the clear audit trail process. You may run a clear audit trail straight after running the year end. So if you have already taken the archive prior to the year end, you won't need to take it again. But if you run a clear audit trail, say mid-year, then we would always recommend to take an archive and backup prior. I have included some links down the right-hand side there. So you've got the clear audit trail process. So if you're not sure or not familiar with the clear audit trail process, then there is a guide explaining, and that process does remove transactions. I've also provided a guide as well on how to complete your year end if it's a process you're not quite familiar with. Now I just want to give you a visual kind of off the back of when you might take an archive. So I've got a timeline here. So let's just say on the 2nd of February, you run the year end to process to close the prior year. You then in April reconcile your first quarterly VAT return. Then in May, you run a clear audit trail process. Then in July, you might run your second quarterly VAT return. And then October, you decide to clear out some records, so get rid of old customers and suppliers that you no longer work with. And then towards the end of the year, you start to prepare for year end again. So I'm going to go through each of these to explain when you might just take a backup and when you might take an archive as well. So when you come to run the year end, we recommend to run a backup and an archive at this point. In April, if you're going to reconcile your first quarterly VAT return, at this point you would just take a backup. If you're going to run a clear audit trail in May, because it's not consecutively right after the year end, and you've maybe processed some more transactions, then at this point, because it's been a couple of months, then we would recommend to run a backup and an archive. But like I say, if it was right after running the year end, then you would only need to do it the once. For reconciling your second quarterly VAT return, you would just do a normal backup. But if we're going to clear some customers and suppliers, then you want to be running a backup and an archive at this point as well. Okay, so some frequently asked questions. So these are questions that we've had on previous sessions. So the first question, so after archiving, can you then delete old records you no longer use, such as customers, suppliers, and nominals? So archiving is just one part of a process to reduce the size of your data. Because it doesn't remove anything from the program, you are unable to clear records until you've ran the clear audit trail process. Do I have to specify a date to run an archive? So no, it creates a snapshot, like a read-only copy, of your data, as it is at that point in time, including current and historical data. And then lastly, we've got, can I select certain areas of the software to archive? So no, it will make a full copy of everything in the software as it is today, new and old, other than your attachments. But like I say, you can find all of that information, what is included in the archive, on our Help Centre. Okay, so let's pop into the software and we'll do the demonstration. Okay, so let's have a look at where you can find the archive option. So one of the first places you can find it, if we could pop into Tools, Period End, and then pop into Year End, you will see it is taken as default. This option is ticked as default when you run your year end. So you might find, if this is something you're not familiar with, you might find that this option has actually been doing it, it's been ticked every single time you've done a year end. So you might actually find you've got archives already sitting in your software. So someone would have to come in here and untick that option for the archives not to take place. So when you click on archive location, it gives you this window here. So you can't change the path, but you can change the description and the archive folder. The other place to find it, if you're not going to be running year end and it might be halfway through the year, you're going to be running a clear audit trail, you want to take an archive before you remove any transactions, then you just go back to Tools, back to Period End, and then down to Archive Company. And it gives you exactly the same window. So again, you can't change the path. That path is set as default, but you can change your description and you can change your archive folder name. I'm going to leave them as they are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click OK. Now, mine's done quite quick. I've got a very small data set. Yours may take a little bit longer before you get this pop-up message. But this is now telling me that my archive process has been complete. So nothing's been removed. Nothing's been posted. It has just taken a photograph, a snapshot of your data. To now access that company archive, we'll go to File in the top left, down to Open, and then down to Open Company Archive. Again, if you don't see this option, it could be your level of access in the software needs to be amended. So we'll click on Company Archive. You can see I've got some from prior years, so I've got year end 22, year end 23, and then we're halfway through 24. So if you've got older archives, and if your password has changed since these archives were taken, you will need to enter the old password. Okay, so we're going to go into the mid-year 2024. So we'll click Open. It's going to ask for my password that existed at that time. And I'll click log on. So as you can see, it looks quite similar in terms of your being in your live company. But if we look along the top, you can see I've got archive mid-year 2024 in front of my company name. So that's how I know I'm in the company archive. And also as well, you'll find that some features have been removed, so like the likes of connected services and things like that. But you can pop into here, you can go into customers, you can have a look at all your old and historical and current customers that you've got in here that existed at the time that the archive was taken. If we were to pop into this customer here, so we'll go into A1 Design Services, I'm going to change the contact name to Joe Bloggs. And I'm going to click Save. So I've changed that contact in my archive company, but I'll show you towards the end of the demonstration that when I go back into my live company, nothing will have changed. Like I say, there's other things where you can't, so you can edit records like your customers and your suppliers, but you can't post anything new. So if I was to try and post a batch invoice, it's telling me there the option is not available when working with an archive dataset or when in read-only mode. It might be that you want to come into an archive. One of the main reasons that you would use an archive is it might be that you need to run some management reports for a prior financial year. What you can do is instead of finding an old backup, restoring the backup, trying to run it for then, or try if you run standard or professional, trying to run the transactional management reports can be a bit of a chew on. Whereas if you've got the company archive, you can come into here, you can go into your nominal codes, and then you can run one of your management reports for that financial year. So if I click run, it'll also tell me as well, so I can export that report. And it's not just your management reports, you can do that with any of your reports as well. So it could be customer reports, supplier reports. But you can come in here, you can still export it. It will say that it's from an archive, but you still get the same functionality. If you feel like you might be going through a couple of years, you don't have to go back to your live company and then into another one. So you can actually go straight into another archive. So you just go back to File, back to Open, back to Company Archive, and then you just choose another one from the list. So you simply log in with the details that existed at that time of that archive. And you can see now I'm in year end 2022. If I was to go to customers, you can see that contact details haven't changed per the archives as well. If I go back to my live data, I just simply go back to File, Open, and then go to Open Company Data. What that's going to tell me is it's going to ask me to log in. And that's me logged back into my company. You can see now that I no longer have the archive in front. And I'm now back in my live data. If I pop into customers, you can see that contact detail hasn't changed from when I changed it in one of the archive files. So that is the company archive. It's a relatively small feature, very simple, but very useful if you do need to refer back to historical data and run reports in a different financial year. Or you need to gather information on transactions that have since been removed by the Clear Audit Trail option. Okay, so I'm going to pop back to my slides. Again, if you do have any questions, we do have Matt on hand today as well. If you do want to pop them across to us. In the meantime, I'm just going to pop back to my slides. And now I'm going to cover what the difference is between an archive, a backup, and the Clear Audit Trail process, because there's always a confusion between the three. So as we've discussed, an archive, it takes a read-only copy of your data and it stores it within your data path. You open it like a separate company and it does not remove any transactions from your data, and you do not need to specify a date to run the archive. A backup, again, does take a copy of your data, but this can be saved anywhere you wish. So it could be on your laptop, a computer, on a USB, an external drive, a server. It's designed to be restored into the program, either over the top of live data or as a separate company if your license allows you to do so. Once restored, you can edit, delete, and add new information. If you are going to restore over the top of live data, please do this with caution. If you want more information about backing up and restoring into the software, we do have a session on our recordings page on all about backing up your data. Now, let's compare the archive to the Clear Audit Trail, because I think this is the biggest confusion between these two here. So I'll not go through the archive again, but we'll cover the Clear Audit Trail. So the Clear Audit Trail process is a process to remove all the transactions to reduce the size of your data. And it's to keep things tidier and more organized. With the Clear Audit Trail process, you would enter a date that you want to clear up to. So for example, if you wanted to keep 6 years worth of data, you would enter the chosen date. Anything before that date would be removed given it fits the certain criteria. Again, I'm not going to delve into the Clear Audit Trail process because we do have a dedicated recording on our Clear Audit Trail process on there. So in your follow-up email, you will receive a link to the recordings page, which is where you will find all of these recordings as well. I will show you how to access that shortly though. Now, as I said at the start of the session, archive is just part of a bigger process. So if you're going to do year end, then you will do the archive as part of the year end. If you're going to run a Clear Audit Trail, so you want to remove transactions from your software, you will do a backup, you will then do an archive, and then you will run your Clear Audit Trail process. But again, all of this is covered in more detail in year-end process session and the Clear Audit Trail session as well. Okay, to summarize today's session, archiving creates a read-only copy of your data, including all historical and current information. It does not remove any transactions. You can take archives at any time, but it is typically done as part of the year end or before running Clear Audit Trail. You will need to use the same user credentials you used when creating the archive. It enables you to view historical data, edit and delete records, and run reports as well. And one thing to remind you of, you cannot add anything new into the company archive. I do have some helpful links down the right-hand side on backing up your data and also a guide as well on how to archive your company data. And it's just the process that we followed on today's session in the live demonstration today. Now, just a reminder as well, you are going to receive a link to the recording of today's session. So when we did the live demonstration, that will be included in your follow-up email. So do keep an eye out for that. You usually get your follow-up email around an hour after the session has ended. Okay, so just while we wait for any questions to come through, it's been a bit quiet on the question front today. Just want to talk a little bit more about growing your knowledge. So if you are interested in one-to-one bespoke training on your Sage 50 account software, we offer various training bundles. So that could be on stock control, construction industry scheme, banking, debtors and creditors, And also as well, if you're looking to upgrade to Sage Professional features from either Essentials or Standard, then we can also demonstrate those all those extras you'll get access to. If you want a personalised quote, please feel free to contact our team on UKI Sage University at sage.com. Okay, so the last part of the webinar, I just want to mention the upcoming webinars. So what we've got coming up is we're continuing the bank feed series, and so we've been doing this series for over about a year and a half now, and we've just recently introduced this year the part 3, which is all about how to import your bank statements or your back list of downloaded transactions directly into your bank feeds. We're also doing topics on filters and quick search. We are repeating the company archive as well, so if you've got a colleague that wants to attend this session, we have got other dates available this month as well. We'll also be covering year end. We're also doing various topics around corrections, so we're doing journal corrections, VAT corrections, stock corrections, and also as well we've got the VAT return series as well. If you are wanting to get registered for any of those, you can visit sage.co.uk/webinars. Alternatively, the link is going to be included in your follow-up email as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's session. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so just to see if there's any further questions or any questions do come through. But if you want to leave the session, you've got what you needed today. You will receive an email around an hour or so with links to both our webinar schedule and today's recorded session for you to refer back to if needs be. Upon exiting the session, you will see a survey at the end. If you could please let us know any comments or feedback regarding today's session, it would be greatly appreciated. We do always love to read those comments. Okay, so all the questions, like I said, there's no questions that have come through. So I want to wrap this session up. I want to say thank you to Matt, who has been on hand today, just in case. And thank you to you all for your participation. Just a reminder, we've got plenty of sessions over the next couple of weeks, so don't be shy and get registered. So I want to say another thank you and take care.